We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon. It is 5:20. That's date 5:20. Today's 5:20, the 20th of May, and you are now tuned into the Monday Mashup. I'm Robert Phoenix. I am your host for the next 57 minutes and 40 seconds. Welcome to the Pluto-Uranus square. It's happening right now. The big giants are squaring off against one another. This is a series of squares that will continue over the next few years. I think there's about 6 or 7 of them that we're in store for, and we're in the third, so we're right in the middle of the squaring off of the 2 outer planets that are really kind of dominating our consciousness right now. You know, there's another planet in the mix, and that's Neptune in Pisces. We don't often talk a lot about that. It's actually a really interesting aspect because it represents sort of the highest of our spiritual idealism, and that there can be an incredible awakening spiritually for people on an empathic and an emotional level. You know, a lot of people think that enlightenment is some really sexy state that is bestowed upon one once people reach a certain level of awareness, and that everything, just the light bulb goes off and everything gets a lot easier, and you get to read people's minds and see auras and do all kinds of crazy matrix-like stuff. And that's not really the case. I mean, I think some of those things come along with the program, because what happens is that enlightenment is a stripping away of illusion. And once the illusion is stripped away, then other things can rise to the surface. And certainly those types of phenomena are available. I'm not sure if it makes you a better person or not, or makes living easier. Sometimes it makes living harder. I mean, what if you were able to walk around outside and see everybody's aura and look into their souls and find out what's wrong with them? I mean, you wouldn't be able to just go to the 7-Eleven and get a pack of cigarettes or a Slurpee. I mean, you'd be in the midst of some major transformational moment. You know, I mean, I think these things can be really helpful, but they can also be a real hindrance. But what we're doing is we're stripping away the illusion, and what's left, hopefully, is the ability to be empathic while not being consumed by emotion. And it's important for us to stay in touch with our emotions. I mean, I think it's easier for women. I hate to be sexist about this, but I think it's easier for women. For men, it's not as easy. We're not wired the same way that women are. So for us, emotion is an interesting experience. And yet we're all bound by emotion. We feel it to one degree or another. There are certain things that move us. And one of the things that moves people, or should move us, is grief. And one of the things that I ran across today is that the new DSM came out, the DSM-5, and they've just basically labeled grief a dysfunction with the DSM-5. This is from Yahoo. This is Normal or Not. The new psychiatric manual stirs controversy. It says here, with the release of the latest edition of the Mental Health Manual, the Diagnostical and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, Life Science takes a close look at home at some of the disorders it defines. This 10-part series asks fundamental questions: what is normal and what is not? So you can go to Yahoo. This is easily gotten. You can find it at Yahoo. I'm trying to actually load the page, see if I can get it to respond so I can read more. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so it says, work on the latest edition, the fifth, began in 1999. So this is the fifth version of the DSM, and they've been working on this now. Hold on a second. Oh, man. That's not good. Hold on. Sorry about that. You know what happens? I have all these windows open, and I try to go from window to window. And when I reload pages, like I just had to do, it reloaded a page that I had killed, theoretically. So let's get back to this. So the work on the DSM began in 1999. So this has been going from 1999 all the way up through 2013. That's pretty significant. So it's a 14-year run. But they've been putting together these new labels and these new dysfunctions. The DSM was first published in 1952. It's been periodically updated. Since that time, there's been a wealth of new research about mental disorders. David Kupfer, chairman of the DSM-5 task force and a professor of psychiatry at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, he told Live Science in an email, many of the changes in DSM-5 were made to better characterize symptoms, behaviors, or groups of people who are currently seeking clinical help but not well defined by DSM-4. One of the things that they've done is they've rolled Asperger's into autism spectrum disorder. So Asperger's will no longer be a classification. Now, I don't have an autistic child, and I don't have a child that has Asperger's, so I don't know how this will impact how those children are treated. If somebody in the listening audience is out there that does have an autistic child, and I think Leo might, I think you may want to look into this because it may impact what happens with your child as a result of this. So there's no longer any Asperger's. Grief will no longer be exempt, or grief will no longer exempt someone from a diagnosis of depression. Can you believe that? So if you grieve, and grieving is a natural, it's a natural function of the human condition. It's now being labeled as depression. And depression is a disease, we all know. So we can't even grieve anymore without being classified as being dysfunctional, because depression is also a dysfunction. Irritable children who throw temper tantrums can now be diagnosed with disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, also known as DMDD, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. How many kids have you known that have never thrown a temper tantrum? And what is the definition of frequent? Every couple days, every couple weeks? Hypersex, which I think is people that like to have sex, is now a disorder, and hoarding is now a disorder. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that preppers are hoarders? People that actually prepare for natural disasters, which we're going to talk about in just a second, that they are now part of the DSM? One prominent critic has been Alan Francis, a professor emeritus of psychiatry at Duke University, who chaired the DSM-4 task force. Francis charges that through a combination of new disorders and lower thresholds, the DSM-5 has expanded the boundaries of psychiatry to encompass many whom he describes as the worried well. Think about that, the worried well. So these are people who do not have a quote-unquote chronic condition, but are human. They're human, and they are susceptible to the stress and the duress that everybody else has. And they deal with it, but for a period of time, it's challenging for them. So they're expanding the definition of dysfunction. What's really interesting is that just a few days ago, I think it was last week, that the guy who created the terminology and the language for ADD came out and said that it's a lie, that he made it up. So how can we trust the new DSM if some of the conditions from the earlier versions of the DSM were fabricated? And we know they're fabricated. We know they're fabricated because what they want to do is they have a whole array of psychotropic drugs that are set up for these new conditions. Now, everything is linked in a chain, right? So what's going to happen is that we have the new DSM coming out just before the arrival of Obamacare in 2014. So all of these definitions will be poured into Obamacare, and people will then be treated for these conditions based on tests that they will take. And I'm assuming that testing will be a priority in Obamacare. Like, you will need to get tested in Obamacare. I'm assuming also that it will be linked into future employment, that if you want a job, you're going to need to have some kind of psychological battery done as a part of Obamacare. It goes on your record. And, oh, by the way, as a result, how a person answers will move them into a particular bucket, which will then be defined by the latest version of the DSM, in which case you will be treated for your dysfunction. So all these things now are arranging themselves into a matrix, so to speak, of cause and effect. So there's no coincidence that the new DSM has come out prior to Obamacare. So that's sort of what's happening generally here on this day where Uranus and Pluto square off at 11 degrees each. But there's other things going on. From a meteorological perspective, I don't know if you're following the news, but there's a whole spate of tornadoes that have hit the Midwest. And let me just find the article here. I had it dialed up. Of course, I had to reload everything. So let's see if I can find it. Let's see what we got here. Here we go. So this is recent. This is just in the last few hours. This is from USA Today. Tornadoes hit plains, Midwest, 2 dead in Oklahoma. So this is today, right now. A storm system stretching from Texas to Minnesota on Monday threatened another round of tornadoes and high winds that has already killed 2 people in Oklahoma and injured more than 20. The body of a 79-year-old Glenn Irish was found in an open area of the neighborhood after a twister slammed into Shawnee, Oklahoma on Sunday, leveling a mobile home park. The Oklahoma medical examiner on Monday claimed the second fatality, Billy Hutchinson, 76. Both victims were from Shawnee, but it was not immediately clear if both lived in the Steelman Mobile Home Park, which was destroyed. Of course, tornadoes always go after mobile home parks. It's like they're intelligent, these tornadoes. They just zero in on these tin cans on wheels that they can toss around. You can see where there's absolutely nothing. Then there are places where you have mobile home frames on top of each other, debris piled up. Pottawatomie County Sheriff Mike Booth said after surviving the damage, it looks like there's been heavy equipment in there on a demolition door. It's pretty bad. It's pretty much wiped out, Booth said. More than 60 million Americans are at risk of severe storms Monday, with the primary targets being Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and Arkansas. The National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center warned damaging wind gusts, large hail, and tornadoes are possible in all areas. Weather Channel meteorologist Kevin Roth said Oklahoma City, Tulsa, St. Louis, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Minneapolis are among cities most at risk for severe weather Monday. AccuWeather meteorologist Megan Evans said Chicago, Detroit, Dallas, and Indianapolis are also in the danger zone. So that's a pretty wide area that we're talking about here. Sunday, there were 24 reports of tornadoes in 5 states, Storm Prediction Center said. In what has otherwise been a quiet spring for tornadoes, May 19 appeared to have been the second most active day for tornadoes in the nation so far in 2013. Weather Channel meteorologist John Erdman said. The storms in Oklahoma on Sunday that ripped off roofs and tossed big trucks like toys were part of a severe weather outbreak that stretched from Texas to Minnesota. Twisters were also reported Sunday in Iowa and Kansas. Across Oklahoma, 21 people were injured, not including those who suffered bumps and bruises and chose not to visit a hospital, said Kelly Kane, a spokeswoman for the Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management. Booth said 6 at Steelman Estates were hurt. So Steelman, I believe, is the motorhome park or the trailer park? Anyway, so we've got heavy weather out there. And that's hitting us here on the day where Pluto and Uranus square off. And this square will last for a few days. And then it will dial back, obviously, because of Uranus being retrograde, and Pluto goes retrograde too, and they both meet up again in the end of October. So it'll be at 11. They'll both be at 11 degrees for the next few weeks, and then they move backwards. And speaking of storms, our president is taking on another storm as we speak. See if I can find this story. This is actually pretty intense. So there's a new scandal out, and the scandal involves the president and Fox News. And this is from, again, from Yahoo. Now, I'd like to know where these leaks are coming from, because these leaks don't come out unless somebody wants them to. I mean, how much shit went down during the Bush administration and nothing got out? A lot. I mean, some got out, but nothing was ever really made of it. But there was a ton of stuff happening during Bush. And that was pretty hermetically sealed and watertight. Now, I'm not an Obama supporter, but I'm just making a note here that he's having a large number of scandals hit him simultaneously. In fact, any one of these scandals probably would have taken down Richard Nixon by now. So this is again from Yahoo. It says the Justice Department spied extensively on Fox News reporter James Rosen in 2010, collecting his telephone records, tracking his movements in and out of the State Department, and seizing 2 days of Rosen's personal emails, the Washington Post reported on Monday. How does the Washington Post get this information? That's what I want to know. Where is this coming from? In a chilling move, sure to rile defenders of civil liberties, an FBI agent also accused Rosen of breaking anti-espionage law with behavior that's as described in the agent's own affidavit, falls well inside the bounds of traditional news. What does he mean by that? The revelation surfaced with President Barack Obama's administration already under fire for seizing 2 months of telephone records of reporters and editors at the AP. Obama last week said he makes no apologies for investigations into national security-related leaks. The AP CEO, Gary Pruitt, said Sunday that the seizure was unconstitutional. The Obama administration has prosecuted twice as many leakers as all previous administrations combined. The president is a strong defender of the First Amendment and a firm believer in the need for the press to be unfettered in its ability to conduct investigative reporting and facilitate a free flow of information. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney insisted last week. He also, of course, recognizes the need for the Justice Department to investigate alleged criminal activity without undue influence. So basically what Carney says, like, yeah, Obama really is all about the First Amendment. However, when it comes to push and shove, he'll actually spy on people if he needs to in order to make sure that we're safe and secure. So I guess that the First Amendment really just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, that's really what's being said here, that philosophically the administration is supportive of the First Amendment and supportive of the freedom of speech and the right for the press to investigate unfettered, as the administration claims, but at the same time they reserve the right to spy on anybody they want at any time if they do indeed feel that there is a security risk. There is no more protection anymore. There's no more rights anymore. People have to understand that. The rights that we have, they're only rights by name. They're not necessarily rights by practice or enforcement. These things went away when the Patriot Act was enacted. The case began when Rosen reported on June 11, 2009, the U.S. intelligence believed North Korea might respond to tighter UN sanctions with new nuclear tests. Rosen reported that the information came from CIA sources inside the hermetic Stalinist state. Investigators zeroed in on State Department arms expert Stephen Jin Woo Kim, who was among a small group of intelligence officials to receive a top-secret report on the issue the same day that Rosen's piece ran online. But FBI agent Reginald Reyes wrote that there was evidence that Rosen had broken the law, at the very least, either as an aider, abettor, or co-conspirator, the Post said. And just what did Rosen do? Here's Reyes in an affidavit to support his request for a search warrant. From the beginning of their relationship, the reporter asked, solicited, and encouraged Mr. Kim to disclose sensitive United States internal documents and intelligence information about the foreign country. The FBI agent read the reporter did so by employing flattery and playing to Mr. Kim's vanity and ego. You've got to be kidding me. Mr. Kim should know that he doesn't have to tell the reporter anything. Not a thing. Much like an intelligence officer would run a clandestine intelligence source, the reporter instructed Mr. Kim on a covert communications plan. Ray said explicitly, comparing repertorial tactics to espionage. Do you see how this is being framed? What Rosen is trying to do, unless Rosen works for the Mossad, okay, I'm not saying that he does, but unless he works for the Mossad or some other intelligence agency, he's trying to get a story out of the guy. This is what reporters do. They try to get stories out of people, and they will use anything that they can in order to get the story. And what is being done here is they're framing James Rosen, who's a reporter, as a spy. And they are linking repertorial tactics. This is the things that people use, that journalists use, in order to extract information from people inside the government or wherever they are, they're trying to reframe them as being espionage. So what's taking place here isn't just one person on trial or one person's professional status being put under the spotlight and then being judged summarily. No, what's taking place here is a whole redefinition of what it means to gather information and to question people that are related to cases that might involve the government. Reporting is now being deemed espionage, and that as a result of which reporters, journalists, commentators might then become enemies of the state. This is very close to Stalinism, by the way. Here is how the Post described another section of Reyes' report using italics for emphasis. Reyes explained how Rosen allegedly used a covert communication plan and quoted from an email exchange between Rosen and Kim that seems to describe a secret system for passing along information. In the exchange, Rosen used the alias Leo to address Kim and called himself Alex, apparent reference to Alexander Butterfield, the man best known for running the secret recording system in the Nixon White House, according to the affidavit. So, all right, so what they're trying to get at here now is that maybe Fox News might be trying to get the goods on Obama. Now, I would not in some ways put that past Fox News because of the ideology passed down from the head of Fox News, from the head of Fox in general. So this is fascinating stuff. This is just absolutely fascinating. Rosen instructed Kim to send coded signals on his Google account, according to a quote from his email in the affidavit. One asterisk means to contact them, or that previously adjusted plans for communication are to proceed as agreed. Two asterisks means the opposite. He also wrote, according to the affidavit, what I'm interested in, as you might expect, is breaking news ahead of my competitors, including what intelligence is picking up, and I'd love to see some internal State Department analysis. Ooh, yeah, of course. The communications system is a bit cloak and dagger, but it's not clear from the Post report or the affidavit that Rosen did anything outside the bounds of traditional reporting. People who know Rosen will smile at the Butterfield reference. The tenacious Fox News reporter is known as a Beatles fanatic, Tom Wolfe devotee, and Watergate obsessive. So there we go. We have a news reporter, a Fox News reporter, trying to get the goods on Obama and being accused of literally being a spy. And as a result, having his phone tapped and records seized. I mean, if this happened during the time of Nixon, this is what Nixon was impeached for. This is what he was run out of office for. Spying on people. So this is yet another crisis for the Obama administration. I think that's what 5 now. Shall we count them out? We have the IRS targeting scandal, right? We have Benghazi. We have the AP scandal. And now we have this. So that's 4. That's 4 pretty significant scandals that he's dealing with simultaneously. I bet you there'll be a 5th by the end of the week. It has to be. 5 is the number of man. So this will have some interesting repercussions. I mean, how much more water can this administration take on? And at what point does the administration do something in order to deflect any more scandalous information being leaked out of Washington, D.C.? That's really the big question. Okay, so let me play some music, and when I come back, what we'll do is we will look at some other things that are in the offing and how this may impact all of us in the very short term. Okay, here's my friend, Ari Oakland. I haven't played this in a while, but I really like this song. It's called Anomie, which is actually another psychological condition, which you can probably find in the DSM. And here's Ari Oakland, the son of Dr. Ed Oakland, my friend, and former psychiatrist. Anomie. I'll be back in 4 minutes and 10 seconds.
I walked in the room and all the voices hit my face, conversations raging, but I just can't relate. And then the man with the crooked grin tells me all the spin and what I'm missing in my life. And I said, am I alone here in a context so unclear? 'Cause I don't know what is what and why is why. And the truth is that the enemy is the real tragedy. And the truth is that the enemy is the real tragedy. Don't tell me ignorance is bliss, 'cause that's just selfishness, as we don't exist in a state of perpetual happiness. You worry about your clothes and your affairs, cash, but baby, don't you know in the end we'll all be dust and ash. Yeah, we'll all die and we'll all cry and we'll all live for a better day. And the truth is that the enemy is the real tragedy. And the truth is that the enemy is the real tragedy. Yeah, I raise my hands up to the sky. I stare and wonder and begin to sigh. And then I'll say, what a life. Oh, lan dan dim dam do, lan dan dim dam said, no sir. Lan dan dim dam do, lan dan dim dam said, no sir. I was disconnected from everything I knew as apathy grew into a jaded view of progress. And even under the light of the revealing sun, all the foresight in the world can't save you from isolation, alienation, constellations of hate and power strewn in the sky. And the truth is that the enemy is the real tragedy. And the truth is that the enemy is the real tragedy. I raise my hands up to the sky. And stare and wonder and begin to sigh. And then I'll say, what a life. Oh.
All right, that was Ari Oakland, Anomie, a psychological condition of feeling disconnected. So one of the things that's really interesting about this whole thing with Obama and Fox is that Fox, through Rupert Murdoch, has a history of spying on people. Okay, so I mean, it's kind of fascinating. I mean, Rupert Murdoch got into a ton of shit in England for wiretapping phones on people, and this came from the head of Fox in England. I believe it's Sky. I think Fox is Sky over in England. So it probably wouldn't be too out of line for, in some ways, to have James Rosen actually observed based on the history of Fox News. Now, I'm not condoning that, but there's been a precedent with Fox and with Murdoch, specifically Murdoch. So anyway, these are very strange times, and like I said, this alone during the Nixon administration would have been enough to torpedo his presidency, and now Obama's got 4 Nixon-styled controversies that are plaguing him right now. And like I said, I think there'll be one more before the week is out. So I think ultimately where all this is being funneled is to the Middle East, specifically to Syria and Iran. Now, Syria is really important in all of this because it's a major, major port. And as a result, this is where Russia's weapons are being able to come into Syria. And those weapons are, it's not just weapons, it's Russian goods, it's Russian technology, and they have a very strong connection with Syria. And Syria is a trading partner of Iran. There are major sanctions on Iran, and those sanctions have really hit the populace. The economy in Iran is not very good because of the sanctions, and the quality of goods that people are able to get has been drastically lessened due to the sanctions. And the one area in that region that they can actually get things from is Syria, because Syria does not cooperate with the ban in Iran. Now, what's taking place there is that Ban Ki-moon, the guy that runs the UN, he is trying to broker some kind of peace deal, some sort of Geneva, peace talk between the Syrians and the Al-Qaeda. This is what trips me out, right? So Al-Qaeda is supposed to be an enemy, but at the same time, they're being funded and given weapons in order to overthrow the Syrian government. Doesn't that strike you as just a little bit strange that the people who supposedly did 9/11, right? Well, now we're backing them in order to overthrow Syria. But by the way, they're still kind of an enemy. The whole thing is incredibly strange and really borders on insanity. Anyway, Ban Ki-moon is trying to put together some kind of a peace talk. And Assad wants none of it. Frankly, I don't blame him. I mean, the guy just wants people to leave him the fuck alone and let him run his country. Whether you think he's tyrannical or a despot, it doesn't really concern you. I mean, there are rights abuses everywhere in the world, even in this country. I mean, we've got despots and tyrants, driving around in black and white cars loaded with tasers. You don't have to go to Syria to experience despotism and tyrannical behavior. So here's what's happening. This is from Al Jazeera. An international peace conference for Syria, where government and opposition forces will be represented, should happen as soon as possible, the UN chief Ban Ki-moon said during a visit to Russia. So he's in Russia meeting with Putin. He's making a public statement that the Russians have got to get involved. On Friday, Ban met Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the Black Sea resort city of Sochi. Ban's trip and a recent visit to Sochi by British Prime Minister David Cameron followed Putin's early May talks in Moscow with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, during which the two sides agreed to set up a new round of Syrian negotiations within a matter of weeks. At a press conference with Lavrov, Ban said we should not lose the momentum generated by the U.S.-Russian proposal to bring the Syrian government and opposition representatives to a peace conference. Ban said the conference should be held as soon as possible, but added that no date had yet been agreed. Lavrov said the sooner this conference is held, the better. The key thing now is who is ready to take part on the Syrian side. So the Russians are advocating that this take place. Ban also met with Russian President Vladimir Putin as global pressure grows on Moscow to end arms supplies to the Syrian regime and drop its support for President Bashar al-Assad. Elsewhere, Ban used the visit to renew a call on Damascus to allow UN experts to assess claims over alleged chemical weapons use. Lavrov alleged chemical weapons use as a serious problem and supported the call for an investigation. The international meeting, now expected to take place in Geneva in early June, hopes to build on a failed June 2012 peace initiative that called for the quick creation of a transitional government that defined no clear role for Assad. So essentially what's happening here is they're reaching an impasse. They're reaching an armed, militarized impasse, meaning that they've probably figured out that the rebels cannot displace Assad and the standing Syrian government. This is just my sense on things. And they're going to try, at this point, to get him out through some form of peaceful negotiation, and then put in a new leadership that's going to be much more amenable to the world banking system. Because, as we know, Syria is outside of it. Syria has no debt. Syria is its own entity. And part of this is to overthrow Syria and bring it into the friendly confines of the New World Order. And Assad has been resisting, and resisting fairly effectively as a result. So now what we have is we have the UN stepping in, and Russia apparently wants some kind of resolution as well, but it remains to be seen how this is all going to unfold. It says here, Russia, Syria's most powerful remaining ally, continues to deliver arms to Assad's regime, but claims that it has no real interest in seeing the president remain in power. And why would they continue to deal arms? But many continue to express alarm at Russia's decision to supply Syria with various powerful missiles and question how this fits in with Russia's commitment to a negotiated end to the crisis. I do not understand why the media is trying to create a sensation out of this, said Lavrov during Friday's press conference. We have not hidden that we supply weapons to Syria under such signed contracts without violating any international agreements or our own legislation. The New York Times reported on Friday that Russia has also sent the regime a new batch of upgraded, yet anti-ship missile systems that make shipping embargo of Syria much more difficult to enforce. So they're basically backing Syria, and they're not backing out of it. But this is where I think the big confluence is starting to take place in Syria and Iran. Now, there's another thing that's building and happening as well, and that is actually north of Syria, on the other side of Turkey and Afghanistan, when we get into the Caucasus Mountain regions, and we get into Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan and Georgia and Kazakhstan. Now this, Chechnya, this region is the new Middle East. And I wrote a little bit about it on Facebook, but this is the new Middle East. Now, we just saw what happened in Boston with the Tsarnaev brothers and how they are now being linked to some kind of Chechen slash Uzbeki terror group. Now, there was a fellow just recently arrested in, I believe, Idaho, who they claim has some kind of connection to an Uzbeki terror group. Now, I suppose what these people are trying to do is have some kind of resistance towards the Russians. I don't know enough about the region to understand that completely. I think maybe Chechnya wants its own little fiefdom outside of wherever they're a part of now. Maybe it's Uzbekistan. But they're reframing that region as being a region of radicalized terror. Now, again, I don't believe that those countries are part of the New World Order. But then again, they don't really have a lot of, when I say the New World Order, this is a global banking system. This is what it's about. And I don't believe that they have an amazing amount of resources, although I could be completely mistaken. They might be sitting on fields of natural gas or coltan, or there may be something in that region that is very, very appealing towards the globalist industrialist manufacturing states. But that's the next region. You've got to keep an eye on that region as well. And all of these things now, the cogs of war are now in gear, okay? They are now in gear. World War III is much closer than people realize. And the reason why this is a frightening scenario or frightening predicament is because of what's taking place here in the United States as it relates to the Obama administration with these 4 concurrent scandals. 5 more, one more I think is the tipping point. I mean, we may already be at the tipping point right now, but one more is the tipping point. And I think that we're going to be dealing with the specter of something happening as a result of this accumulation of scandal upon scandal upon scandal, which is now weighing down the Obama administration. Now, Obama has a 53% approval rating. If you can trust the polls, which I really don't, I think his approval rating is much lower, just like the approval rating for Bush was much lower during the Bush administration. I don't care who the president is. I don't think that the ministers of information in this country will allow the approval rating to slip any lower than 47%. That's I don't think any president has ever gone below 47%. It's just a little under half the populace, obviously. But Obama floating at 53, I don't think it's a representative number. I'm on the internet a lot. I read a lot of comments. It's not even close. Trust me. Not even close. So as the pressure mounts upon the Obama administration, that pressure has to have a release. It has to go somewhere. And I believe that release, that pressure release, is likely another conflagration somewhere in the Middle East. And part of this is due in part to Obama being squeezed. You know, I think that what's happening is that they want to be able to get him of his own volition to jump into a war, a big-time war with Iran. And I talked a little bit about that, I think, on Friday. But the big challenge with the war with Iran is, or why they need to go to war with Iran, is because Iran is using gold now to sell oil. They don't use the dollar. And what's happening with China and Russia and India, especially with China, is that they're hoarding gold. They're hoarding gold, and they're using the gold now to buy oil and gas reserves from Iran. And as a result, it's destabilizing the petrochemical dollar. So the threat of the dollar is at stake here. This is a big deal. It's a totally big deal. So Obama has really 3 options at most. One option is he resigns. Now, I don't think he'll do that because he's a very proud Leo. And even though I don't really trust his chart, I'm going to assume that it's close enough and that he is a Leo. He has all the markings of a Leo, except he doesn't have a big head of hair. But he did when he was a kid. So that's one potentiality, that he'll resign, but I don't think he will. The other potential is that he'll give in and he will go to war, and the war will be hardcore. It will be against Iran. They'll try to take down as much as they can in Syria first, but then they'll go after Iran. And the third option would be to spill the beans and to come clean and to say that he's being squeezed and this is why he's being squeezed, and these are the things that he does not want to do as president. I mean, that would be a completely radical tack. No president's ever done that before. But that would be the third scenario. I guess the fourth would be the scandals just go away and he continues to move on. I don't think that that's the case, because there seems to be a new one now every 2 or 3 days. And like I said, I think 5 is the tipping point. 5 is the number of man. 5 is the most difficult number in the minor arcana in tarot, right? In 5 we have disappointment. In 5 we have strife. In 5 we have worry. These are the big 5s. The 5 of Cups, the 5 of Wands, 5 of Swords, which is defeat. So one more scandal and we hit 5, and that's going to be, I think, the line in the sand, the Maginot Line, and Obama is just about ready to cross it. Now, the square between Pluto and Uranus, in my estimation, this is how I'm sort of sifting through this. The square between Pluto and Uranus, on one level, is the conflict between the government and the military, because I think that there are factions in the military that are working on their own agenda separate from the government. And the government has parts of the military that are in line with them, but not all of the military. And this is the square. This is Uranus and Aries, I believe, is the sudden flashpoint of militarization that literally just explodes onto our consciousness. And this could look like a military coup with a military style of government in place of a quote-unquote democratic republic, which is theoretically what we are. And then we have Pluto in Capricorn, which is the rise of the oligarchic, overarching, overbearing, monolithic government that does everything from soup to nuts, from business to actually maintaining the rule of law. It's all one massive superstructure. And so we have this one massive superstructure that is pushing against Uranus and Aries, which is, Aries is military, it's might, it's force, it's Mars, and Uranus is rapid, it's fast, it's sudden. So there's something going on here. There's something behind the scenes that we don't completely understand or know. I mean, one of the things that I've talked about a little bit before was David Petraeus, and what's happened with him in relation to Obama and some of the other generals and admirals that were really forced out. I mean, it was clearly a coup, and this happened right after Obama got reelected. It was just days after Obama got reelected. So all these guys have connections, and they have relationships and people in place in very important positions inside both the military and the CIA. So I think something's going on. I think something is taking place inside the government where the military and the executive branch and the Congress and the Senate are kind of at odds. They're squaring off. And perhaps we might see some of that rise to the surface over the course of the next few days and perhaps the next few weeks. May 31st, circle that date in your calendar. That's 11 days away. That is theoretically when this asteroid is supposed to come very close to the planet. I think the asteroid is called QE2, if I'm not mistaken. Now, what's also interesting in this is that the film After Earth, starring Will Smith and his son, was moved up for May 31st. And the film, if you're not aware of it, is a film where Will Smith and his son actually come back to Earth after Earth has gone through some kind of purge, meaning that the human race has left the planet and animals are now running wild, and there's been mutations and all kinds of crazy shit. So they're here to survive the wild and untamed version of Earth after some kind of mega apocalypse or mega event in which humanity was forced to leave. That movie got moved up to the 31st of May. It was supposed to take place, supposed to air after the 31st of May. So anyway, there's a lot on the plate right now. And of course, we've got more solar flares coming our way, and things are heating up. They're heating up significantly. Now, one of the things that the Pluto-Uranus square can produce is massive combustion, massive spiritual combustion, which means that you can undergo a lot of change in your life right now. It can be dramatic change. It can be really impactful change. It can be awakening and enervating and alivening. Is that the appropriate word? But anyway, this energy happens at a collective level, but also on a personal level, it's impacting us. And so, who are we? Where is that Uranus and Aries aspect inside of ourselves? Where is the Pluto and Capricorn aspect inside of ourselves? And how do we manage these mega forces that are colliding all around us? So the stakes are high, but the reward is just as high as well. Just hang in there and stay as present as possible. Let's see, Wednesday, I'll have astrology, speaking of which. 2 hours worth, navigating the astrological matrix. We'll do an update on the Pluto-Uranus square. And then Friday, you don't want to miss Friday's show. Courtney Brown starts off the first hour. And then the second hour, I'll be playing an interview, which I'll be doing tomorrow with James Gilliand from E-Seti Ranch. So you don't want to miss Friday's show at all. Tell your friends. It's going to be a good one. In the meantime, hang in there. I mean, things are happening very quickly now, extremely quickly. And that means that resolution can take place on a number of levels for a number of issues in your life. And the rapid and quantum impact of healing, I think, is also there as well as a result. It is not business as usual. It's just not. But at the same time, you can redefine what kind of business you're interested in dealing in as a result. So use your head to discern what's real, your heart to discern what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Monday Mashup. Thank you very much for listening in. And if you live in the Midwest or you know people in the Midwest, say a prayer for them, hang in there, and hopefully these massive tornadoes that are, quote-unquote, terrorizing a large chunk of the country will dissipate very quickly. People can get on with the business of life. All right, use your head, your heart to step when it's possible. I will see you on Wednesday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.